morning. Thank you all for coming. This is it. I'm sure you all have the document. Now stop laughing at me already. I hear you've already done a story. Shh. You probably stole it in the night last night. Y'all, this is early. I want to make that point. We decided to go ahead and release the budget early. I think this is as early as a state budget has ever been released. And we thought because of the complexity of the issues before us and because of the hope, every year I'm hopeful that the General Assembly will get in and out and do the people's work very efficiently. We thought it would help them as they begin the Senate deliberations next week in earnest to really have the document. So it is here and we're glad it's over, although we all know it's only beginning. The budget, I believe, is very concise. I looked through it again this morning. We've worked hard on it, and I believe that it really helps, once again, to set North Carolina on the road to being a tremendously competitive partner as we go global after the recession ends. And we are very hopeful in this state that it's ending, and I'd love to have another conversation a different day with you about that. If you recall, this time last year when we talked with you about the budget we'd released, we had about a $4.5 billion hole. It was the largest deficit in North Carolina's history, although during the Great Depression and soon after, it was equally hard. The numbers just weren't as large. Last year, we cut more than $2 billion from the budget. We got rid of, eliminated, cut 2,000 positions. And I told you then that every single decision that I made in the dark of the night with this fabulous budget team, and Charlie and his shop have done marvelous work. I'm so grateful to all of you against the wall there. Every decision was made with one litmus test from me, and that was how do we make the right decision to structurally ensure that North Carolina's fiscal base and fiscal house is in order, and how do we keep us on a trajectory of global competitiveness. That's what's defined North Carolina. Tough decisions, quality investments with an eye on the future. And the past 6 months, you've heard me kind of boast about it because I'm very proud for the state. Our decisions last year have been the hallmark of North Carolina's accomplishments. Again, we are the best place in America to do business. That's a big deal in a state that's lost as many jobs as we've had, because people think we're structurally poised for greatness. And the big thing for me as the governor and as the financial leader of the state is we kept the AAA bond rating. That's a real win for North Carolina. And everywhere I go, businesses and other people are very, very glad that we did that because there was some doubt. And so the budget that you have this year reflects a continuing belief in the physical challenges that we face. It's a realistic budget. It makes tough decisions now instead of kicking them backwards or forwards for another time. North Carolina's economy is stabilizing again, let me say, but I've been very direct. There is a new normal. I don't believe anytime soon we'll be back to the giddy days of 2007 and early 2008. And so we all know that, whether we're a family or a business or a government, that there is a new normal in America. And this budget helps us set the table for that new normal. And it also propels us to where we need to be as the economy improves. The budget cuts about $1 billion and about 600 jobs, positions. So you add that to last year's cuts, and since I've been governor less than 18 months, we've cut $3 billion out of the corpus of North Carolina's enterprise with about 2,600 positions deleted. And I believe that we're doing, that I'm doing, and the General Assembly's doing exactly what people around the country and the state are doing. They're having to do more with less, and they're having to make tough decisions about priorities. This budget is another movement for me and for us to drill down to what it is that needs to be fixed about state government. The duplications, the inefficiencies, the lack of technology and innovation in our enterprise is addressed in this budget. We reduce or eliminate about 70 programs that are unnecessary or inefficient, saving taxpayers about $200 million. I continue to focus on efficiencies in government doing more with less, and really trying to move us as a bureaucracy into the 21st century. And Charlie's team has been wonderful. We started in January on budget program reviews, where we really did go back as far as we could go with fiscal data, and we looked at duplications and inefficiencies, and we simply just began to get rid of. That's the first step. We'll continue to do that for the next year. We found, just for an example, there are 2 different university campuses that run 2 almost identical programs in the same city in North Carolina. It's ridiculous. You don't need both. So we propose consolidating those programs. The savings is not huge, a couple $100,000, almost $265,000. But the point is, why were we doing 2 of the nearly same things in one town? I mean, it just didn't make sense. We have earmarked $100 million for the rainy day fund. I really believe that we need to keep that earmarking. I believe it continues to be one of the criteria in the AAA bond rating that we get. And we've set aside $20 million for the retirement payback. That's a beginning. It isn't where you want to go. But again, we are in a cash-short enterprise, and you have to make choices. The budget, I believe, is defined by innovation, by innovative thinking, and by focusing really on 4 priorities that you'll hear and see constantly throughout the document. We wanted to be creative as we use North Carolina's limited resources. And again, every decision in this budget is the same as last year's. It is reflective of how we can really come out of this recession poised for recovery, and how we can maintain the structural integrity and the economic competitiveness of this thing we love called North Carolina. In the coming months, I will propose several more tremendous changes, and we'll work with you as we put them together. I have sent word to the General Assembly, and again, it's reflected in the document, that I intend to organize and reorganize state agencies, the cabinet agencies, for efficiency and service consolidation. We will do that and have the plan in hand by late November. We will continue to consolidate state agencies and eliminate unnecessary boards and commissions. We will send over a document to the General Assembly in the next 2 or 3 weeks with a listing of about 100 boards and commissions that we believe need to be eliminated. That will cause great discussion, so get ready for that. And finally, we are using, again, the opportunity of public-private partnerships to make government work better for less. The budget focuses on the 4 priorities you've heard me talk about all year. Obviously, jobs now, the #1 priority. The second priority, and you know what it is, career, college, ready, set, go for education. The third priority is setting government straight. And finally, something that keeps us all whom we are is the safer and the healthier communities. Let me talk briefly about jobs now, and you can find it in the budget document. We've taken very precious limited dollars, 86 million of them, for key investments in small businesses. This is a small business focused budget, and infrastructure. We're going to create 35,000 jobs with this $86 million during the next 3 years, and we'll have another jobs program coming out to you in the next 3 weeks. So the budget has buckets of money, $15 million for Back to Work Incentive Fund. What does that do? It helps small businesses hire the long-term chronically unemployed. Second thing that's been very important across the state in our listening sessions is this $250 tax credit for small businesses that purchase health care for their employees. I've been amazed at the number of small business owners who really want to do that and who are relying heavily on that credit. There is small business startup credits to spur creation of new small businesses. There are funds for small business centers in the community college where so many new business owners find themselves. There is $22 million, and this is something that's brand new and is just in its embryonic stage. We have created in this budget something called a mobility fund that will be used to address critical congestion bottlenecks that will improve the logistics capacity of North Carolina. This fund will be a set-aside fund and will not impact the equity formula that has been so much discussed. It would really help us, I believe, in our statewide economic goals. It's our intention, my intention, working with the General Assembly, to leverage this money and become some kind of a green fund for North Carolina's mobility projects. Career College Ready, Set, Go. I won't bore you with it, but it's really as important, I believe, as the jobs investments, because you've got to keep your eye on the future. The budget is really strong toward reaching North Carolina's goal for education, and you all know that goal by now. Everybody in the state has bought into it, from local school boards to the universities to the community colleges, that every child, no matter where the child lives, must be able to graduate high school with what it takes, the career skill set, to go immediately to work, to go to technical school, or to go to a community college or a four-year college. In other words, we don't want to graduate kids from high school who can't support themselves or who can't go on to further education. So what do I do differently? First of all, the budget maintains the integrity, protects classrooms K through 3, which I believe everybody in the state understands is the seed corn for the next generation's workforce. Teachers and teachers' assistants are walled off, and there is a strong provision in the budget which requires, and I believe the General Assembly will go along with this, which requires county boards and city boards of education to use IDEA money, Title I, Title II, and the potentially new jobs money that is being debated now in the United States Senate to keep teachers employed. I don't want to see the wholesale headlines across North Carolina about teachers being fired. There is money in the system to protect teachers. Secondly, diagnostic assessments. Walk with me on this. I believe it will change education in North Carolina, and I believe it will become the template for America. What do I mean? Many of you have seen them. We've offered you press opportunities to go to the training session. We are in the process of training teachers across this state in using handheld technology so they will know in real time how Johnny and Susie are performing in K through 3. That means there is no excuse any longer for a kid to get to 3rd grade and the teacher says, oh my goodness, he or she can't read or write on grade level. Those days, because of technology, are gone. We have the Teachers Academy developing a course for every teacher in the state this summer that will help them know what to do when they identify next fall kids who are falling behind on grade level. This will revolutionize, I believe, the capacity of children to compete. There will also be diagnostic assessments in grades 8 and 11. We are tired of hearing about remediation for our high school graduates, and I believe this will help in that process. Those diagnostics will be around reading, writing, math, and science, the core curriculum that you have to go on in either a career or to higher ed. A big thing for North Carolina as we stay competitive with other states in trying to recruit and retain teachers is to continue to move our teachers up on the salary schedule, that step increase, so that North Carolina won't fall behind our other southern neighbors. This is all about competitiveness. You've got to be competitive to keep good teachers in our school and to recruit teachers. The budget continues to invest in the College Promise, fully funding need-based financial aid in all of our public universities. It covers the enrollment growth in the universities and the community colleges. And as an aside, you've heard the number. This past year, because of the recession and because the people were trying to find new job skill sets, our community college system has seen an increase of 39,000 new students in 1 year. It's unprecedented. That's the size of all of NC State in one calendar year being developed in North Carolina. So we also expand need-based financial aid for students in the community colleges. I'm also calling on the General Assembly to join me in a payback for our teachers and state employees for the salary reduction that was taken in the last year's budget, 2008, to balance the budget. I made a promise to the groups from where I took the money. I did that in the spring, as you can recall, to actually pay the bills last year. It's a matter of honor. We should pay that money back to our state employees and our teachers. The ethics package, as we move into the third bucket for this administration, setting government straight. You've had jobs now, you've had ready, set, go, and now we move to setting government straight. You can't start anywhere more important than with education, than with ethics. 2 weeks ago, we announced the ethics package, and this budget funds the provisions in the package that I announced. I've called on the General Assembly to crack down on contractors' influence, setting boards and commissions straight, and a number of other initiatives to bring ethics reform further in North Carolina. This budget provides the resources we need to help track and report all of these efforts. There is funding for the Board of Elections for campaign finance tracking systems. There's funding to the State Ethics Commission to support easier web access for completing SEIs. There's this continued push for more accountability and transparency that is so important. This budget cracks down on fraud and abuse as you set government straight. It saves taxpayers money. There is now a tech-based Medicaid anti-fraud and abuse system that is almost to the full implementation stage. I believe this calendar year it will save about $35 million. We can actually mine the data now and know what the providers or the users are actually doing with Medicaid services. This is simply state-of-the-art technology deployed to crack down on abuse and fraud and waste in Medicaid. We have also proposed the money to help General Cooper and strengthen his very renowned national Medicaid anti-abuse and fraud investigation and prosecution unit. The return on those dollars is 4 to 1. Every time we invest in a prosecutor for him, we return $4 to the taxpayers. We require narcotics users, and I don't know why we hadn't done this before. I think it's just the greatest idea to simply use one pharmacy. Doesn't that make sense? And one doctor. So they're not going to be able to doctor shop for drugs and for services. This is going to save at least $500,000 initially, and who knows what it will save later on. There's an electronic system that we're deploying now to fight the abuse of child care subsidy funds. One would find that hard to believe, but that is happening in North Carolina. It'll save about $6 million in fraudulent payments that we can track now. There will continue to be targeted Medicaid reductions through enhanced fraud and utilization management efforts while we protect the core direct health care services as much as possible. I'm calling on the General Assembly to join me in this mission of setting government straight. It's important work. In the 21st century, I believe this state has to retool and implement technology throughout the government enterprise, the same way that businesses and families across the state are retooling and doing more with less themselves, or doing it in a different way. The fourth bucket, the fourth priority, the fourth pillar, whatever the word is you use for this administration, is safe and healthy communities. And so what do we do there, you say? First of all, I believe North Carolina has, in the process of being deployed, a national model of criminal justice information system. You all know it's CJ Leads. This budget continues to build out that capacity. What CJ Leads does is put all of North Carolina's criminal records in one place so that law enforcement can actually mine the data in a time-ready manner. We will finish out the build-out in Wake County. We will then, this budget year, expand the system to North Carolina's major cities to serve more than half the people who live in North Carolina. And by 2012, we will have CJ Leads 100% deployed in North Carolina. No longer will a magistrate or an arresting officer not know what they're dealing with in the context of the criminal apprehension. $5 million to Viper. Viper is important. We must build out that system for first responders on the ground to communicate and respond in times of emergencies. And for the first time, and it couldn't be more appropriate with the circumstances we've watched unfold with the death of the member of the State Board of Education who was a close personal friend of mine, The law enforcement across the state will be able to collect DNA as soon as they arrest somebody for a felony. That's big stuff for North Carolina. We will continue to increase funding for the recruitment and retention of probation and parole officers. We will adjust the Medicaid budget to match the reality that in these tough times, more people are enrolling in Medicaid. And we will expand health choice to 8,100 more children. And I'm told by all the folks who know better than I that this will make sure that there will be no child on a waiting list in North Carolina. That's really important for the people of this state. We also reopen the enrollment period for AIDS Drug Assistance Program. That's something we've all been focused on doing. We are increasing the inpatient local bed capacity for the mental health system, and there are targeted reimbursements in the budget for adult care homes that provide acute personal care services. This budget focused on mental health and on Medicaid. I'm told that if we don't stem the increase in Medicaid in this state through technology and utilization and purely simple innovation, every new dollar for the next 5 years will go to Medicaid costs, and then we will bleed over into the general fund. North Carolina cannot move forward without fixing Medicaid. So all in all, the priorities are the same for us. You're used to them. Jobs, jobs, and more jobs. Career, college, ready, set, go, so that everyone graduates high school ready to go on to a career, community college, technical school, or college. Setting government straight, and safe and healthy communities. Let me say again, before you ask some questions, I'm determined to change some of the platforms of state government. I'm determined to use technology and innovation and private-public partnerships to do more with less. Any governor who wouldn't do that in these challenging times really doesn't understand the new economy. And we're going to do that in North Carolina, and I hope that you all will help us and support us as change continues to happen. If you think about the history of the state, and you all know what a lover of history I am, again, let me remind you that in the 1950s and 60s, this state was the second poorest per capita state in America. You had leaders during hard times, during stressful times, who continued to step up and change things. They continued to make investments for the future, even in very, very depressed economies. We've never seen an economy like we've been through these last year and a half. But we will not back away from our moral obligation to continue to invest in the future of the state while we focus equally hard on innovation and cutting down and resetting government and setting it straight. So all these years, during the good times and the bad times, we made the right decision. And I believe, honestly, and I've done this budget 1 year before, that this budget is a really strong, good budget. I urge the General Assembly to look at it, to adopt it. I'd like for them to adopt it in toto. I'm not naive enough to believe that'll happen. But I think it's the right decisions for the people of North Carolina in the 21st century. Chrissy?
This budget is out before we've seen the numbers from April 15 tax collections. How confident are you that these numbers will stay the same once we finally see the full revenue picture?
They probably won't. The availability may be a little bit healthier than what we're agreeing to here. The nice thing about the way the governor and the General Assembly works together in a time of limited resources is that Charlie goes over to the General Assembly and they work together on a revenue statement of what the availability is and what the goals are going to be. And that's an implicit promise that the numbers won't change from the numbers we agreed on. That was part of the whole decision to go ahead and do the budget. The April 30th surprise that we all hope will happen may or may not happen, but we are where we are, and these are the numbers you're going to see both the House and Senate use.
Governor, one place that you get the money from is eliminating 600 positions, and I'm presuming that those are all vacancies. And
some are filled, some are filled, some are vacant.
If you're taking vacancies in the past, there's been a fight over that, and the legislature has won in that they don't want to eliminate those because that's the cushion for when bad times come. Do you think that'll get through this time?
I think that the General Assembly is in the same challenging position that the administration's in. You have to figure out what your priorities are. We have a finite amount of money that we've agreed to invest for the people of North Carolina. The focus is on jobs and fixing schools, and you got to use the resources you have to do that while you set government straight. And so I believe that at the end of the day, last year they agreed to eliminate 2,000 positions. They did that. They agreed with the $2 billion cuts. I believe at the end of the day you will see them agree with this. North Carolina is one of the healthiest, fully funded states in America. Other states do their budgets sometimes at 97% of state employee payroll. Thank you, Charlie, payroll. And so this is just a move to be more reflective and more accurate. Yeah. Sorry, Chrissy, you're in charge, not me.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, thank you. I have a couple of really quick questions. The diagnostics, you're in a pilot project now. I'm wondering what the data has shown you to convince you that it needs to be rolled out fully in K-5.
Lynn, the diagnostics, as you know, are in their first 8 months. And I actually can't recall if we'll roll out statewide in September. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We'll get that information to you. I've been in and out of classrooms, and I've talked to teachers. And, you know, you were over there with us one day. You saw the teachers. And teachers tell me that this real-time ability that diagnostics will have for them to be able to actually know where a child is in reading and math and sciences and just creative thinking is the piece that's always been missing. So I'm hearing all this anecdotal data. There is no child data yet because we haven't deployed the technology. But in the pilot projects, teachers feel very good. The challenge for us, Lynn, and the challenge I'm trying to work with the Teacher Academy on, is that we have to, it's not enough to identify the kid who's fallen behind. You've got to have the resources and the capacity then to mentor or provide the extra help to bring the kid up. You'll see in here some proposals, I think, for summer boot camp and for teachers' academies trying to help them do better. This may take us a year or two, but since I was a teacher watching my children and grandchildren now, I've never been able to understand how we can sit back and not try to intervene when you know a kid is falling behind in math and reading. It just makes good common sense, and this is a tool to help teachers implement this.
Governor, you ordered right after the last budget passed some pullbacks, about 5% efficiency. How much did what agencies held back during the past year help you find things to cut in this current budget recommendation?
Well, it obviously was the right thing to do, and we hated to do it. There was nothing worse than calling the agencies after we passed the budget and said, wait up, here we go again. But fiscally, it was the right thing to do for the state, and obviously there are going to be some of the smaller agencies, y'all can see the graphs up here, that are going to have a 5 to 7% cut. So we used the monies they held back, and that gave us a little more boost as we were going into the budget discussions. But there are some of the pieces, and Charlie's going to stay after I leave to answer some of the in-depth questions. The educational institutions, we've tried to hold at about 4% cuts. And in contrast, some of our general government platforms are 7.5% cuts. But that money helped.
Some of the money that was held back this year, are those cuts showing up in this document?
Yeah. Sure, they have to.
We'll take 2 or 3 more for the government. Go ahead.
You put $100 million towards a rainy day fund, so I think it gets boosted up about $350. What do you? We all know that the federal stimulus money is going to be at least severely curtailed beginning in June after this budget cycle. Do you believe there's enough money in the rainy day fund to help us get through the next step, which is going to mean we're going to have a big hole that we're going to have to fill next year?
I think next year is going to be hard. I'm direct about that. I've told everybody in the state that the economy appears to be beginning to bounce back, and I think that's good news. Sales tax collections are up again this week, and people are appearing to go back to work. We do believe that there will be another uptick in unemployment because as people believe there are jobs out there, they actually go apply for employment assistance and the numbers tick up. That's just the way the system is. But I'm on the road a lot. Yesterday I was in High Point at the furniture market, and I had a man who had been in a company his whole life. It had had 45 employees. He does the frames for some of the couches at the place I was touring. And I asked him, I said, what do you think? He said, last year, and he used a cuss. He said, well, you know what he said. And then he said, but I feel better. And I said, why do you feel better? He said, I cut my workforce to 14, and for the first time, I'm going to hire 5 new people. And we've got some contracts. And so I think that anecdotal data speaks to home builders and auto salespeople. I mean, you can see a little bit of a movement. The bottom line is no movement will be strong enough for us to come bounding back quickly. And so we'll have more cuts. I feel like the efficiencies that we put in place, the focus on investment in jobs and small businesses will help us be better off next December when we start this process again than we could have ever been without this budget.
Governor, there's 130.
Over there with the staff, Scott. When I bragged on him, I didn't mean you.
There's a $135 million flexibility cut for the local school systems here. Last year, the biggest fight you had with the legislature, probably budgeting, was over how to go about cutting the local school systems. Is this setting up yet another fight instead of actually directing position cuts?
I hope it doesn't set up a fight. I've long believed, Scott, and you know how I think. I mean, I've long believed that people in the local system can make the better decision. I've never believed in trying to mandate from Raleigh what happens in your kid's classroom. And this flex cut allows superintendents and elected school board members to make, I believe, the wise decisions for their individual schools and their classrooms. But for the first time, there is a mandate in the budget. I've already spoke to that because of what I saw happening last year, where some of the school systems just chose, for whatever reason, not to identify some Title I schools as Title I schools. Maybe I don't know why. But this year, the provision will require that Title I, Title II, IDEA money, and this new jobs money that I believe is coming will be used to protect teachers first.
Last year, when you were raising $1 billion in taxes, there was an outcry from the opposition party that there's no need to raise taxes so we can, cut more, go deeper. And now this year, you've found basically $1 billion in cuts without raising taxes, fraud, waste. Why wasn't, or why couldn't that have been done last year?
Let me tell you why there was the need for the sales tax revenue. And I know I'm going to hear all about this in the campaign cycle. But let me tell you again, my overriding concern with every decision I made last year was what happens to North Carolina structurally. And how is it we get from X to Z? And how is it our people continue to remain competitive? And I was very realistic about the need for a revenue source if we were to stabilize. You have to remember that I sat up at night with Charlie trying to find the money to pay the bills. I've told you all there was a time there was $256 million in the state's checking account, and we had $1 billion of bills to pay on Charlie's desk. And those decisions that we made last year were all defined by what it was we could do to ensure that North Carolina was structurally sound, that there wasn't smoke and mirrors financing. It was the right decision, and I can prove to you it was the right decision because we are site selection's choice, and we talked at length with the site selection evaluators over how they could choose North Carolina. They talked to me about the sound decisions we'd made, tough decisions. It was not easy to do for me or the General Assembly. And when we were told we'd maintained our AAA bond rating, when this time in January a year ago, folks were talking about North Carolina like California, New York, New Jersey, Florida, Pennsylvania. Y'all, we've come a long way. I don't want you to give me credit, but I want you to give the policymakers credit who've made the hard decisions for the people. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't politically popular, and it isn't easy, but this state is better off because of the decisions that were made last year.